Hello, my name is Raphael Simmons, and I am here to present to you The Other Side of Poverty. The Other Side of Poverty is a product of the research done by Dr. Stephanie Jones and Mark Vagle as part of the Classroom Project at the University of Georgia. Their focus is on how class issues manifest themselves within classroom environments. Jones seeks to help educators to better understand how their actions and language can work towards a child's benefit as well as to his or her detriment. This presentation shifts noticeably away from a deficit model. Children are not placed in categories in need of repair. There's less emphasis on strategies regarding changing children and or their behaviors and more of an introspective focus on the issues of class in our school buildings. Let us begin with the end in mind. Here are the goals that have been set for this session. You will learn the basic principles necessary to meet the needs of working class and poor students. Class-sensitive teaching practices will be demonstrated. You will have opportunities beyond this presentation to develop these research-based practices. You will examine the role of formative assessment practices in promoting class sensitivity. Other methods of incorporating social class-related content across the curriculum will also be discussed. You will leave with a head start on establishing positive relationships with all of your stakeholders. Perception, or sometimes misperception, plays heavily in crafting our opinions, values, ideals, etc. When I asked the teacher to complete the exercise on page 3 by drafting a narrative of her life as a child, the imagery was amazing. She talked about summertime and enjoying her pool. She mentioned how great it was to sit and eat ice cream with her grandparents. She talked about how all of her siblings, friends, and cousins would spend the entire day outside playing and having a great time. She was extremely happy when sharing her story. Afterwards, she shared a bit more with me. Until she was 13, her family lived in a single-wide manufactured home in a trailer park. Her grandparents lived in the same community. The pool she enjoyed so much was a small wading pool. She stated that those were the happiest times of her entire life until she started junior high school. She had no clue that her family had less money than the average family. She thought everybody's father worked 2 jobs. The image of her life was always good until some of her middle school classmates perceived her negatively. Perception. We have to be open-minded and question our own perceptions in order to understand some of the children that we teach. This activity is designed for elementary children and asks them to draw pictures of their life outside of school. It can give teachers a bit of insight regarding children's personal perceptions. As you take a look at the 5 principles for fostering a class-sensitive approach in classrooms and schools, you will notice that they ask nothing of students. The principles really focus on the introspective nature of this process. The real question is, how can we, as educators, help eliminate classism in our classrooms and in our school buildings? Disrupting social class hierarchies starts with being honest. Everyone watching this video represents a diverse group with a variety of personal experiences. I am certain that each of us has experienced or witnessed some level of classism, and these experiences may have been incidental or accidental or purposeful overt acts. For example, a teacher shared that she had admonished a young student for expressing a desire to be a waitress like her mom when she grew up. "You can do much better than that," the teacher told the little girl. She later realized that her immediate reply quite possibly gave the child negative impressions about herself, her family, her place in school, and her place in the larger society as a whole. That was not her intention at all. She genuinely cared about that little girl's future. She realized that she should probably have engaged the child, asking her to talk more about what her mother does. Furthermore, She could have concluded by highlighting the girl's talents and skills, leaving her with a list of options, a connection to the future, and no questions regarding why she should be better than her mom. I know, high school and middle school folks are thinking, what about that young lady with aspirations of being an exotic dancer? The fact is, sometimes you just have to hit them with one of those really, that's interesting, and just keep the train moving. Page 6 alludes to assumptions and something called the chicken strip story. Here is a brief retelling of that story. A teacher participating in a workshop returned from a lunch where teachers were asked to engage in a class-focused reading of the place where they ate. She reported, I think I had classist thoughts while I was there in line at the local grocery store when she was waiting to order hot chicken and a couple of side items. She continued the story, detailing her assumptions about class hierarchies when witnessing a woman in a custodial uniform ordering 2 chicken strips for lunch. The teacher felt sorry for the woman, presuming that she only had enough money to buy 2 chicken strips. She immediately, however, interrogated herself and her assumptions that a lack of resources dictated the woman's lunch selection rather than maybe a lack of hunger or even a preference for smaller portions. The teacher realized her assumption that she was positioned higher on the social class hierarchy than the woman in front of her. This sort of self-positioning afforded the teacher to make judgments about the woman and even construct sympathy for the woman and guilt about her own lunch order. The teacher shared an epiphany she experienced during the class-focused reading. That epiphany was that her perceptions of her own location on the class hierarchy have framed how she interprets people and their practices around her, and that these perceptions have been cultivated through a class normative understanding of the world. You've heard the phrase before that public education is geared towards the middle class. Sometime in the near future, take the time to think about and list hierarchies in your school and classroom in ways that can be disrupted. Language is a good place to start when attempting to break down class hierarchies. Pages 7 through 9 examine presumptions perpetuated by language and offers examples of how to offset those presumptions. Often and subconsciously, we tend to other some parents and students with our words. We say things like these kids or those parents when we should be saying things more like my students and my parents. And we do use those phrases, but they're often reserved for certain students or certain types of students. I'll be the first to admit that I have been guilty of this during my career. Reading, writing, and social studies are obvious spaces in the curriculum where social and working class perspectives can easily be interjected. Pages 10 and 11 offer some examples of how to integrate those perspectives into various content areas. Pages 12 and 13 walk you through the examination of standards for bias and opportunities to make them class sensitive. Those steps include analysis of the standard, deconstruction of the standard, and finally, making the standard class sensitive. These steps can even be adapted to be used to examine other resources as well. For example, you could utilize this same process to examine existing frameworks, lessons, assessments, or activities that you already have in place. If you know anything about baseball or softball, then you have to know that small ball is an excellent metaphor of how formative assessment practices should work. Formative assessments should be kept small and directly linked to instruction. So many initiatives and movements in education are perceived to be a home run. Educators, especially teachers, know that student growth and achievement takes a lot of hard work and that success takes time. Pages 14 through 18 are Dylan Williams' article on formative assessment. You can read the article at your leisure, but note that it was included not only to provide some background regarding formative assessment, but to provide the framework from which class-sensitive formative assessment practices and strategies can be developed. The key components of Williams' conception of formative assessments include students and teachers using evidence of learning to adapt teaching and learning, to meet immediate learning needs, minute to minute and day by day. Pages 19 through 24 provide real examples of formative assessments that are aligned to Williams' conception and then tweaked to be more class sensitive. Pages 25 through 27 provide a template and guide to develop class sensitive formative assessments. Working towards the goal of alleviating class issues requires teachers to start small. You have to begin with yourself and your own assumptions and presumptions. From there, you can begin to make changes to your classroom. And from there, you can make even broader changes throughout your building. Reflect on and discuss broader school and classroom policies and practices. Implement those changes where you can. Reviewing pages 28 through 31 will supply ideas for conversations to be had and actions that need to take place. The handout includes a planning template which would be indicative of a department, grade level, building, and or district that is serious about alleviating class issues. The remaining pages include a list of working class children's and young adult literature. I do not have to dwell on the power and impact of children being able to read stories about other children that are just like them. I also included information on how to find out more about the Classroom Project at the University of Georgia and research on social class. I would like to conclude by saying that we are teaching children. We are not teaching programs. We basically have to take the stuff that children bring to school with them each and every day and work with that. My advice to you, value that stuff. Value their experiences. Thank you for listening.